Israelis went to the polls for the second time in less than 6 months, yet Israel's political future still remains unclear. Here's a look back at how the week unfolded, followed by analysis in our Jerusalem studio. Hours after the polls closed and early in the morning, Netanyahu came here to Likud headquarters in Tel Aviv to deliver what he called a short but important speech.
There will not be and there cannot be a government that leans on Arab anti-Zionist parties that negate the very existence of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state.
Despite the disappointment of no clear winner, Netanyahu's supporters welcomed him after 3 a.m. with songs of Bibi, King of Israel. Netanyahu said he had already talked with right-wing parties, but hinted at a unity government with the opposition. Netanyahu is calling on Benny Gantz and his blue and white party to join him in forming a national unity government.
Benny, it's on us to form a broad unity government. Today, the nation expects us, both of us, to accept responsibility and work together.
In a video message, Netanyahu said he had met with the other right-wing parties and they would negotiate as a block of seats.
We cannot go to third elections. There's no reason to. I oppose it.
With more than 97% of the votes counted, Gantz's blue and white party is ahead with 33 seats to Netanyahu's Likud at 31. But 12 potential seats on the left are held by the Joint List, a combination of Arab parties. They have never been in the government and aren't likely to join this time either. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin pulled Netanyahu and Gantz together to pose for a handshake photo at a state memorial service for former Prime Minister Shimon Peres. But that's about as far as the unity is going for now.
The people chose unity. The people went for Israel to be before everything. And therefore, blue and white, under my leadership, won the elections. Blue and white is the biggest party.
Well, John Wagi, CBN senior editor, and Julie Stahl, CBN correspondent. It's been a long week. We've been following these elections throughout the night sometimes and into the early morning at Likud headquarters. Here we are now after Benny Gantz has said he's going to be the one to form a government. So where do you think we are now? And John, what are some of the external forces that are coming into play right now?
Yeah, it's been interesting to be in Israel this week because it's constant. Everything is focused on the domestic number of seats, number of parties, who's going to finish out on top. And in the midst of that, the world is watching, and Iran and the Palestinians and other people are actually happy about the election results because it plunges Israel into uncertainty for a period of weeks, maybe even months. Right. And that is good news for the Iranians. That's good news for Mahmoud Abbas, who seems to be pretty joyful that Netanyahu might be deposed. So those are strategic considerations that, you know, the Israeli voters didn't want to make that the number one priority. We learned that in our random man-on-the-street interviews that we did. But they're going to be forced, Israel as a government, to deal with the strategic situation, which always looms.
So, Julie, you know, Netanyahu has been the longest-serving prime minister in Israel's history. What impact do you think he's had on the region and particularly some of the Arab Sunni nations?
He definitely has. You know, one of the complaints of the Israelis was he's been there too long, he's like a dictator. But actually that kind of that presence, that continuous presence, probably really gave him a lot of credit, a lot of respect throughout the Arab world. And we know in the last few years, he has been able to kind of bridge that gap with a lot of the Arab countries, even if they haven't quite made, you know, diplomatic ties with Israel. We know that he's in contact with Saudi Arabia, with some of the Gulf Emirates. He's got pretty good ties with Egypt. So that long-serving presence actually was a benefit to Israel.
And we know in the Middle East, strength really does matter. Projecting strength, deterrence really makes a difference. John, here we are right now. Benny Gantz is saying he wants to be able to lead the next government. And we're looking at Reuven Rivlin now, sitting down with all the parties and asking them for a recommendation for who's going to lead the next government. Where do you see us standing right now? And tell us about what you think the results of the elections may not necessarily say that Israelis wanted a unity government.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things that, especially to hear the media account of this, which is that it's the end of Netanyahu, and everybody in Israel wants a national unity government. That's not really true when you see the numbers borne out, that especially among Israeli Jewish voters, there was a strong, even majority of the people who wanted to see a more right government, and it didn't materialize with the formation of how many parties made it into the Knesset and how many actually, how many seats were won. Plus you have the Arab bloc having 13 seats as the final count pretty much recommends there. So it's not a given that everybody wants a national unity government, but that's certainly the message that's being delivered through the media. I think one of the strategies of Blue and White will be to prolong this process, and they would like to see Netanyahu further weakened with a possible hope of a unity government without Netanyahu at the head of the party.
Julie, I mean, we're going to go through a long process now with Reuven Rivlin hearing the recommendations, and then see if it's Gantz that goes ahead and forms a government. Could take weeks, but also the Netanyahu and the right bloc may say there's no way you're going to form a government without our votes.
That's true, and he can't. It doesn't. It looks like Benny Gantz kind of won because his party got more seats than Netanyahu's. But if you talk about the overall picture, he really didn't, because the Arab parties, they've never joined a government, and he's not likely to ask the Arab parties, not because Israel's racist. There are still Arab Knesset members. There are Arabs in the various parties, but these particular parties really are against the state of Israel. So they're not going to join a government. So it's possible Gantz won't be able to come up with a coalition government. I know we heard that one of the ultra-Orthodox parties now wants to go and see if he can talk to Gantz. So we don't exactly know how things are going to shape up.
Well, John and Julie, we've been following it all week. We'll continue to follow it. John, it's great to have you here in Jerusalem, by the way, for this election. You've been covering these for
miss it.
over 20 years. So, John, Julie, thanks a lot.
Alpha Omega.